You drink coffee?
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, well, you guys gotta share then.
Tim, you want some?
You
I
always,
have a little glass going already, actually.
I like coffee. Here, 401.
Evening, Jonathan.
How you doing?
Okay, how was the meeting?
Yes.
careful, something on the bottom, don't get it on your
I was
paper.
hungry. I was really hungry. That dessert was real good.
Oh, it's paint night, I didn't know.
Oh, shoot.
Completely unrehearsed.
I think so.
Josh.
Okay.
I just wanted to call you up so people would think you're important.
Okay. Yeah, and the collared. Also kind of pinkish shirt. There's a lot of pink in the audience too. What's going on today? Lisa's got pink, Carolyn's got pink.
I'm starting to hallucinate with the pink shirts.
Hallucinate.
It's a boy band. All right. Okay, I think we're gonna get started. Everybody, welcome to our May 22nd, 2023 City Council meeting. We're glad you're here. Now that I've called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor McLaughlin,
Present.
Counselor Long,
Present.
Counselor Randall,
Present.
Counselor Richardson,
Present.
Counselor Runyon absent, and Mayor Mays.
Present. Item 3 is Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Counselor Dan Richardson to please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Counselor Richardson. Item 4 is approval of the agenda. We do have one amendment to the agenda. Item 10A is not going to be discussed tonight, which had to do with the City Hall Council chambers renovations, and that will be discussed next month. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Randall and seconded by Counselor Richardson to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5 is presentations and proclamations. We have a very special presentation to make tonight to a lady that's sitting in the back row. If she would please come forward. Her name is Mary Davis, and we'd like to recognize her. because usually I do this from back there, but for her. How are you? I'm gonna read this certificate of recognition to Mary Davis. Mary Davis has been the lead volunteer for the Dalles Bluesies for 10 years, since the cruise ships first started docking at the Dalles in 2012. The Bluesies are a fun, historic themed group formed to help promote the history of the Dalles to cruise passengers docked in town. Every day, the ship docks, you will find a group of men and women dressed to the nines in flapper dresses and sheriff's costumes, welcoming every cruise ship passenger that steps off the boat. They are welcomed with cheers and delight as the Bluesies flirt with passengers, take photos, and pass out applications to join their lucrative trade. On November 2020, Harrison Sheriff officially retired from their volunteer gig with the Bluesies and welcomed their last boat of visitors. Mary has welcomed over 100,000 visitors to Dalles in her time as a volunteer Bluesie. Although they may not know her name, everyone in the Dalles, if not the whole gorge, knows Mary Davis. She is the original Bluesie dressed up in feathers and fishnets to greet visitors with a huge smile and a hello there sailor. Travel Oregon honored Mary Davis for Spirit of Service on April 5th, 2023 Governor's Conference on Tourism in Portland, Oregon. And we couldn't be prouder to see Mary recognized for all she has done for our preservation of history, making sure our guests receive the best reading and also volunteering at so many organizations while creating smiles for all. I want to emphasize that this is just a Bluesie that she has been a service to our community. On behalf of the City Council and the citizens of the Dalles, please accept our appreciation for all you have done to promote tourism and preserve our history. Dated this 22nd day of May, 2023. Congratulations. Also, Mary giving her a medallion with the city logo. I think we have it. What was yours?
Mary, can you speak into the microphone?
Okay. Well, the idea of promoting the history of the Dalles in an offbeat way may have started with me, but those characters who agreed to go on the adventure with me are the ones who deserve the recognition. Pioneer ladies, brothel inspectors, Bluesies, flappers, sheriffs, gold miners, cowboys, and the Chinese washerwoman are just some of the historical people who have made our history come alive. This is for them. There is a saying, if you have it, flaunt it. Well, the Dalles has it. So the Bluesies have been flaunting it. The Dalles is aged to perfection. The gals from the Dalles may be over aged to perfection, but they are going to continue to keep the spirit of history alive. So thank you. I love my hometown, and it's been wonderful working with everyone, and I may be back.
We hope you do come back, Mary. By the way, there's an election coming up in 3 years for city council. Also, I'd like to ask your colleagues, I'm not sure everybody really saw them. So could you please stand up, the people that she recognized in the back? There we are. There's two. Ma'am, when you get recognized, you're supposed to give your name and address before you speak. But we're going to waive that tonight. Okay. Okay. Thank you again. Okay. Item 5B is Link Transportation Update. Jesus Mendoza and Sarah Cook from McCad are here. Come on forward. Please introduce yourselves and your titles. We know you work for McCad, so thank you for being here. Think you can follow that tough act? Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for having us here today. My name is Jesus Mendoza. I am the transportation manager.
Mr. Mendoza, could you talk into the microphone?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry again. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Jesus Mendoza. I am the Link Transportation Operations Manager. Accompanied with me is Sarah Crook, who is a travel trainer for the Link and CAT, Columbia Area Transit. And we wanted to provide some updates on the Link Transportation in comparison from last year to today. So we're going to go over some slides and discuss where we're at in terms of the fixed route services today, bus shelters and semi-seats. We are proposing to change fares, ridership information. Then I'll pass it on to Sarah, who will discuss a little bit more, give an introduction about the travel train, talk about the GoBets program, partnership with the community and engagement, and we have contact information as well. So first off, I wanted to talk about the fixed route service that we provide here in the Dalles. So last June of 2022, we adopted the transit development plan for Wasco County for the next 20 years. Part of those recommendations was to increase the number of frequent stops in the Dalles. Also stopping and okay, sorry. Also talking, I'm sorry, that's what you said. Increasing the number of stops within the Dalles, increasing our stops in densely populated areas near medical facilities and recreational areas. So what we've done this year was increased our service from 8 stops to 19 stops on the Blue Route. We are targeting neighborhood areas such as Chenoweth Rim Apartments. We are going down 10th Street as well, going up Scenic Drive, targeting Scenic area in Garrison, Esterway, and then down to the hospital. We're also looping back to go towards downtown. So we're making a stop in front of the automotive shop on East 2nd and Taylor and looping back around. Previously, our red route wasn't going west side of town. We were just servicing the east side of town. So now we're focusing on trying to get clients to the east side or the west side so they can connect with Mount Adams Transportation. They can also connect with Columbia Area Transit or purchase Greyhound tickets if necessary. And then on the next page, we'll see the red route. So we've done the same thing with the red route. So we've increased our service from 9 to 21 stops. We're stopping at Foley Lakes, West Village, and Sunrise Apartments. We also have a stop at Safeway and Goodwill. And again, that's heading towards westbound so they can connect with other transportation providers as well and reduce the amount of time that they spend on the Link vehicles. So the idea was to improve efficiency in the routes, serving best neighborhoods. And we were previously already taking this route, but we weren't making as many stops. So that just kind of increases our frequency. In the next page, you will see the bus route. So it shows you the map of where the blue and red route travel on. We deviate a quarter mile of the route, so individuals can request the deviation to their house or to the location that they're going without having to walk from a stop location. You will notice that we also have link transfers, so in case somebody has to go to the east side of town, they can connect with the red route and make connections with the Mount Adams Transportation and Columbia Area Transit as well. So to increase the service and encourage riders to ride our fixed routes, we purchased 4 new bus shelters and 20 semi-seats. The shelters will be installed at one Community Health and Mid-Columbia Center for Living. One will go at Foley Lakes, another will go at Waters Edge Medical Center, And the fourth location is still pending approval, but we're aiming to install that at the 700 East Union Building, a state building, so it can serve individuals who need to get to the DHS office or work source area. It also serves as a local central point, so they can walk down to the courthouse, the city hall, areas in the downtown area. So the semi-seats, we purchased 20 semi-seats. We're aiming to install 10 on the red route, 10 on the blue route. Some locations that were identified were Sunflower and Lockwood, West Village Apartments, Cascade Square, downtown areas, Second and Taylor, AutoZone, and the Dallas High School. So we are proposing to change fares. So on the fixed route, we're aiming to decrease from $1.50 to $1. The dollar ride service will increase from $1.50 to $2 for all one-way rides within the city limits of the Dalles. And the change is set to go into effect May 29th. The change in price is in connection with the regional transit providers and trying to establish a more consistent regional transit system and having the same price for all of those who travel through the region. Individuals will be able to continue to purchase the Gorge Pass. So the Gorge Pass is a $40 pass that it's valid for a whole year, and they can ride unlimited on all the fixed routes, including regional providers. So the price is $40 for adults, $20 for kids. And for individuals who need assistance with dollar ride tickets, we'll continue to support them through the Gorge Transit Connect program, where we offer reduced passes and free tickets for individuals who need assistance. The next page will you can see the ridership information. So for this is for fiscal year 2023. Total passengers for Q1 service data was 5,532 passengers, one-way trips, elderly and disabled trips, 2,133. Revenue service hours, 3,550. Revenue service miles, 48,464. For Q2, we had total passenger one-way trips, 4,837. Elderly one-way trips, 1,998. Revenue service hours, 3,133. Revenue service miles, 34,539. For the most recent quarter, the last quarter we had total passenger one-way trips, 4,972. Elderly one-way trips, 1,983. And revenue service hours, 3,449. 36,686 service miles. You will see that from Q1, we had a decrease in service miles and hours. That was because we were contracting with Columbia Area Transit to operate the intercity shuttle. So that deducted our mileage and service hours. Service miles was about between 10 and 12,000 miles per quarter. And so that's kind of like why the difference in numbers there. We are looking to take back over the intercity shuttle beginning July 1st. So we should see those numbers pick up again on the deviated fixed route. But I think for the Dalles and this purpose, you can see that the fixed route service and ridership level is pretty consistent within the Dalles itself. And before I hand it over to Sarah, I just want to express gratitude and say thank you to the city of the Dalles. The annual contribution that the city makes helps us leverage federal and state dollars and allows us to continue dollar ride operations and serving individuals who are elderly and disabled. And the city of the Dalles also providing the service, the public work service, assisting with the bus shelter, identifying the bus shelter locations, and just supporting with the installation, demolition, and all the work that David and his crew and Dale support for Link Transportation. And also just the community in general for promoting our partners, promoting the service and just guiding individuals to the link so we can provide the service for those who need it.
Hi, my name is Sarah Crook. I work for McHead in the public transportation. I work closely with Jesus. My title is travel trainer. And the first question I always get asked is, what is a travel trainer? So in the most generic term, a travel trainer is a person who works with older adults and people with disabilities to get them to ride public transit independently. Now, my job title is expanded here in the Gorge to veterans, Native Americans, the Latin community, and just general public who want to learn how to ride our public transportation. You reach out to me, I can give you general knowledge and guided tours, trip advice, just general help. One of my main responsibilities is the program manage the Gorge Transit Connect program, which Jesus had mentioned. We have our free and discount fare program through. I work with over 30 social service organizations in Wasco and in Hood River counties, one community health, Columbia Gorge College. Right before I came here, I released 15 free passes and fare books to one community health and Haven here in town, making those available for their clients. To be qualified to work to get this discount fare program, which we created through this program, you have to work directly with me. And we request that you become a resource for your organization, your coworkers, and your clients, and provide us with data, stories about how the Gorge Pass and transit training has helped. And we use that data to, of course, make more grants, to make more money to help fund the program. So then also part of that Gorge Transit Connect program is a side program, which is the Go Vets Columbia Gorge program, which was started through a grant through the Rural Transportation Program. And basically is a grant where I go out through Wasco and Hood River County and provide free Gorge passes and medical ride shuttles to veterans that the only qualifying factor is that you say you're a veteran. In exchange, I just ask a few informational questions, and we use, of course, that data to further more grants. I have been working with the VSO here in the Dalles, Russell. I have gone to the Dalles coffee they have on the second Tuesday. I've been to a few advisory, the Veterans Advisory Board meetings, and hoping to put in an application there to work closer with Russell. And then also I just made a connection with WorkSource Oregon and giving them the information to work with their vets. Part of this veterans grant is deciding how we get the transportation to veterans. And they asked to have some veterans passes on hand because they explained the difficulty of we've got them there. So it's difficult to bring them back in to give them the pass. So can we have the passes, word of honor, we'll fill out the form. And so little steps like that and working on how we can get that information and serve the veterans, because the goal is to serve the veterans and get them their the transportation help they need. So I only have a few minutes. So I'm just going to cover those things. The next slide is about a lot of the outreach that I've done. So I'm not going to go into detail, but just an overview of the last 18 months and a lot of the engagement and one-on-one work I've done. I have actually in the last couple months, I've had quite a few folks that are in Special Olympics reaching out to me because the activities are starting up in the summertime. So they're trying to figure out how they can get to their activities. A lot of them have been moved to Hood River. So working one-on-one with each individual on making that transit work for them, because each of their disabilities is different. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting job and I'm having a lot of fun. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Mendoza or Ms. Cook?
I don't have any questions, but I have a comment. So 2 years ago, I purchased the $40 pass, and I used it for a couple of months. I tried to use it exclusively just to see what it would be like to be someone in the Dalles who didn't have a car. And it was very challenging, but I can see with the added stops and some of the additional things, the travel trainer, that a lot of the issues that even I had trying to figure it out at first, things that made it intimidating, are certainly going to be much easier for people now. And I'm really excited to see that you have so many stops. I would get off and walk a long way, and I thought, what if people can't really walk this far? But I know there was dial a ride, but a lot of people just don't understand that when they look at the website or they hear about transit. So anyway, good job.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you all very much for coming. And we'll look forward to a future update from you guys. Okay, thank you. Item 5C is a FEMA proposed floodplain map update. And we have with us tonight Mr. Ted Perkins, who's come to us from the FEMA office up in Linwood, Washington. Welcome, sir. Great. Please don't be afraid to use that microphone. Get it right up there. Thank you for coming.
So are you picking me up? All right, or a little closer? Okay. Yeah, I'm Ted Perkins. I'm an engineer for FEMA. And so what I do is I help oversee the flood maps we produce for the National Flood Insurance Program. So your community participates in the National Flood Insurance Program, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Maybe Lisa, if you can introduce.
Hey, my name is Lisa Adair. I am an outreach and engagement specialist with Resilience Action Partners. We're a contractor with FEMA. We primarily work with community engagement and communications. So we've been working with your local community to plan several public outreach events that we'll talk a little bit about during Ted's presentation.
And I apologize, I don't see this. Is there ability to share screen? Okay, I got it. All right, thank you. So FEMA produces flood maps across the nation because flooding is the most costly and deadly natural hazard that we have in the United States. And it's also pretty predictable. And so back in the late 60s, what we saw nationally, so FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, we're trying to respond to disasters, and ultimately what this is trying to do is reduce disaster, let people know where the disasters could occur so they can actually minimize their exposure to that. And so back in the late 60s, they started this National Flood Insurance Program to create flood maps so people knew where the risk was. And if communities were willing to regulate to keep themselves to minimize their exposure to that risk, then the federal government would make flood insurance available to those communities. And so we first started doing that with the Dalles back in 1984 was our first map. And a lot of things have changed since then. So we have a lot better technology, we have a lot better data, and we have a lot more years of record to be able to better understand how flooding occurs. And so we're basically tasked across the nation to update 1.5 million miles of stream. And so that's taken a lot of time as we go across the country. But what we're doing right now is we're updating all of Wasco County. And so that's flood insurance, 70 flood insurance rate map panels, but one flood insurance study that kind of speaks to all the risks that are out there. So there's two levels of analysis we do because we're doing that 1.5 million miles of stream. It's impossible for us to walk every mile, but But in any areas where we have more urban areas around streams, then we do walk those streams and we survey them to make sure we have very accurate information. And so that's what all those detailed streams that are listed, Rock Creek, Mill Creek, 3 Mile Creek, Chenoweth Creek, all those ones we've walked and surveyed to make sure we got it, have a very good depiction of that risk. But with that, we also have very good detailed topography from LiDAR, which is where we fly these airplanes and they shoot thousands of pulses to get what the ground looked like. And this is what we did not have at all 30 years ago. And so we're still able to capture the other 320 miles of stream in your county to better reflect what that risk is on all those streams. In addition, we worked with the Corps of Engineers who updated their understanding of what that flood risk is. And the flood risk we look at is the 1% chance flood event. So you've often heard the term 100-year flood. It's got a 1% probability of occurring in any given year. So on average, it'll happen once in 100 years, but sometimes you see them several in a short period of time, and then none for a long period of time. And so, but that's how we're doing it. So you don't see these floods very often. But when you look at it nationally, so 1.5 million miles of stream, that still means 15,000 miles across the United States are seeing that type of flood or larger every year. So that's basically how they decided to kind of manage the risk nationally. The flood maps are used to help identify the risk, show you how high the water gets in different places and where the water goes. It also helps to provide a basis for rating flood insurance. So actually back in the 60s, one of the reasons why the federal government got involved in flood insurance was that none of the lenders really wanted to take a risk on it because they didn't know what that risk was. So that's why we developed the maps to be able to understand the risk. And so we could actually rate the risk. It's also used by a whole bunch of other people as well. So like your emergency managers are going to use this information to when a flood does occur, they need to know where to go. Where's the problems going to be? So there's a variety of people who actually use these flood maps. So I mentioned the National Flood Insurance Program. And again, that was started in the late 60s. And the whole idea is to reduce disaster costs. So basically before a disaster occurs, getting communities to understand where that risk is and then be able to do something about it. And so your community has regulations to basically reduce that exposure by if someone is going to build in the floodplain, then they have to build above that flood elevation to kind of make sure they're safe. But they also look at the building practices to try and encourage people to not build in the floodplain where possible. And so again, part of the program is if you are willing to set these minimum floodplain construction standards, then the federal government makes that flood insurance available. And so your community has made that decision to do that, as many communities have across the country. There's several reasons for that. One is also there is a lending requirement by the national lenders to have flood insurance if you are built in the floodplain. So that added hook really made it where people want to get in the program so they can get flood insurance. There is private insurance, but it's harder to get than the national insurance. So on the left side there, you can see these are the effective maps that you are currently using. These are dated and they are paper maps. And so trying to orient yourself if the roads have changed or moved is more challenging. And so what we're moving to is more of a digital product where you can actually bring in all your different layers. You can bring your orthophoto layers, you can bring your parcel layers, and you can really better understand exactly where that flood lies on on different parcels and structures and give better advice on how and where to build. So as part of doing any of these updates, there are changes. And there's always some that are going to be added and some people who are going to have it be removed. And so a lot of that's related to where we basically were able to figure out what the ground is a lot better than we did back in the early 80s. And so for the city of the Dalles, you can see in the bottom chart, there's actually 25 structures being removed and 103 being added. So there is a net add of people into the 100-year floodplain part of this. And so this is part of why we're going to actually talk about the outreach we want to do. These maps are only preliminary at this point. So there is an ability to comment or appeal on these maps to try and make changes. Talk about that. So we've been going through actually a long process with these maps. I think we probably started maybe 2015 or so when we first met with, but we first were able to show draft maps in 2020. And so that's where we showed just to community staff, hey, this is what it's starting to look like. We haven't done all the quality review checks and all that on it. And just tried to get feedback there to see if there's any adjustments we need. After that, we kind of made some adjustments and then issued back in October what we call preliminary maps, and that's where the maps are actually available to look at. So then we held a meeting in January, talked to your community staff about what do you need to do for outreach and how can we support that, so your constituents know that these flood maps are out there, and if they're affected by any of these changes, how are they affected? What can they do about it? If they disagree with it, again, I'll talk about the appeal period, which will start probably late this summer, and it's a 90-day appeal period. So it'll go till fall, this fall. And once we get all that, then we will resolve those comments and appeals until we get a final product, which we call our letter of final determination. That's where we say, okay, we've heard all the comments and appeals. We've tried to address them the best way possible. And then communities then have 6 months to update their ordinances to reflect the change in their understanding. So as part of the outreach, there's kind of a two-tier approach. So in the past, it was pretty much all public meetings. We'd come out and we would support, we'd bring people, flood insurance experts, the engineers who did the study, and we are planning on doing all of that. And actually, we're going to be in the Dalles on tomorrow night, and we're going to do South Wasco County Wednesday night, and that'll be in Wamut. And that's what Lisa's been working hard on setting up with your community staff, making sure they have all the resources to help get the outreach done, to make sure everybody is aware that we're doing this and that they can come and get their questions answered. But as COVID happened, we had a really tough time doing public outreach. And so we kind of switched to a virtual story map. And that's basically trying to mimic what we do at the open houses. So at the open houses, you have a table. Again, you first kind of go and you get a map of your property and show you what it looks like now in the effective, and then what it's going to look like in the preliminary. And then you can kind of go around to like the insurance table and ask, how is this going to affect me insurance wise? What do I need? Is there a way I can get the best insurance rate? You can go to the floodplain management table and understand how is this going to change what I might want to build on my property. or what elevation would I have to build to, those types of things. And there's 5 tables. Anyway, I think I'll show a list of these in a minute, but this site is also going to have that same format in a story map. And there's things that you can click on up at the top. It's basically like going to each table. There's still context at each one of these things. Get your own map. You get somebody to answer questions about insurance. And that's going to be up throughout the whole process. So even if someone misses the public meeting the next couple of days, there'll still be an ability to ask questions about or get their map and understand how it changes for them, and also how they might get there. So the story map, these are the things actually I just was talking about. You can download a personalized map, or you can email us and we will create one for you. There's a flood study engineering tab, and again, we'll have a flood study engineering table at these public meetings where the engineers that did the study will be there. And so if there are things like, hey, I don't understand how you got water in this one spot, the engineers can sit there and kind of pull up their models. They can talk you through what it is that caused that water to get there. And then they also can talk about what information might you provide if you actually think that information is not correct. So let's say you're up on a bit of a bluff. Somehow our models didn't pick up on it. Most of our LiDAR and topography really good nowadays, but it still can miss sometimes. Sometimes maybe it hit a tree or something like that and didn't capture something quite right. So if you had survey of your property, you could submit that kind of information. We could take a look at it and make a change. And so there's 2 levels of comments or appeal, what we call it comments or appeals. Appeal is a very strict standard that FEMA has, which is if you don't like what we have, you have to show what we did wrong, and you have to provide models, updated, better information. If you do that, then yes, we're going to address that. And not only that, if you don't like our answer, you can even go to a review board that's outside of FEMA, just to make sure it's objective. But short of that, again, we don't get around to updating these maps very often, so we want to get it right. So we want this to be a map that really works for you long term. And so what we also are looking for are comments, kind of the canary in the coal mine. What is it you don't think that looks right? And then work with us, our engineers, to kind of identify maybe what technical information you can submit that might help you. So again, that survey, or if you knew how high the water got on a particular flood, and we were able to figure out, how that relates to the 1% event, we might be able to make an adjustment. So those are the kind of things that someone could comment or appeal. And again, we'll also have staff to talk through insurance and regulations. So Lisa's been working with your staff, building these things that go out. These are going to be the handouts at the open houses. They kind of tell you what the tables are. So you have the property ID, the flood insurance table, the flood study table. So if you want to go and talk to that group, what kind of questions you can get answered. Some of this information I think also got sent out to all those who are affected about coming to the public. So some of the things have, and again, these are the tables that are actually going to be at the house, which I kind of talked through already, but those are the key contacts. I'll be there as the presenter, and I also kind of oversee the flood study engineering. Sonia is the one who crew actually did the work. So again, we've been planning this open house, but again, those are the next couple days. We've been helping as much as we can with supporting your communities on the outreach. I spoke to that's the the overview, and I appreciate your time just to kind of wanted to just get the word out as much as possible. And I thought this was one more venue to let people know that we're in town and we're really wanting to talk to people.
Great. Thank you very much. Questions for these two? Counselor Long.
So when and where are the open houses?
So the first one, if you want to.
Yeah, this is Lisa Adair again, just for the record. So the first open house is going to be tomorrow at the Dells High School, and that's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30. And then we'll be down in Wamak at the community center there on Wednesday, and that one will also be 5:30 to 7:30. And just to plug too, Ted will be giving a presentation towards the beginning of that public open house event. That'll be at about 5:45 at both of those public open houses. The open house, the presentation that'll be at the open house tomorrow at the Dells is also being streamed online. So if there's individuals who aren't able to attend in person, they can also watch that presentation online, and they'll have a chance to ask questions to Ted then as well.
And where online?
There's a Zoom link. So the virtual resource that we showed, the story map, there's a Zoom link up there. And then I believe it's also been posted on the city's website as well.
Okay, great. The website's probably easy. Okay. And then I had a couple questions on the slide. It was purpose of the NFIP. It said that it may reduce the dependency on structural flood control. I don't understand what that means in plain English.
Yeah, so when the National Flood Insurance Program was enacted, which was the late 60s, it followed a period in the US where we built a lot of dams and a lot of levees, and that still wasn't fixing our flooding problem. So levees work up to a point, then they don't. And so sometimes we were seeing worse disasters from those flood events that got bigger and then overtopped, and then the water couldn't get out. So this is kind of what we call a non-structural type of solution, which is getting people to try and build outside of the floodplain, or if you're going to build high enough that even if the water does get on the other side of the levee, that you're above that flood elevation and that you're not going to see damage.
Prevention?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then that's probably what the next thing means too, because promotes floodplain management practices that increase resiliency. Basically, don't build where you're going to get flooded out.
Don't build, or if you have to, then there are ways to build that it can handle those forces. And so we have guidance on how to build in the different flood type zones that we have.
Okay. And then my last question, you were talking about the appeals process and that there were steps to go through. And is that as challenging for the homeowner and as costly as it sounds?
So again, the official appeal is
Mhm.
you have to actually basically be an engineer to refute the engineering we have. But again, one of the reasons why we have an engineering table here is to talk to the layperson about how the flooding got to where it was. They can talk about the details, and I even encourage them, if someone points out something that just doesn't look quite right, and even to you as the engineer, like sometimes when we do these things on a larger scale, we miss something on house scale. So it's worth bringing it up, and it's worth talking it through with the engineer, and we can try and help. But one of the challenges we do have is a lot of times people will say, "Hey, I've lived here for 30 years. I've never seen flooding. I don't want to be in the floodplain. I shouldn't be in the floodplain." And the problem is this is a 1% probability event, so I can't guarantee you would have seen it last 30 years. So there's nothing statistically I can actually change. So, and we have to have a model back. And so we ultimately have to have that, or we can't defend it, through our process. And so that's why we have to get That's why I have the engineers talk to the people who think there are issues,
Mhm.
because they're the ones who are likely going to help make that change if it's there. Now, again, some of this is the risk is there, and there's going to be sometimes when someone's not happy about that, and we have to talk them through it. But we also want to talk through that as well. We want them to believe that you didn't just make this up, that,
Right.
that there's actually data behind the decisions we're making, and that there is a risk there to try and address.
So based on the timeline that I saw, if someone made a comment and your engineer was looking into it, that there is not, it's kind of all due at the same time, both the comment, but also the appeal. So
Yeah.
someone's not going to know if your engineer had time to look at it and said, oh, yeah, we made a mistake.
Yeah, during that appeal period is when we want either comments or appeals. And we encourage, if you do have any heartburn about anything, to submit that. But again, to be successful, it's worth talking to the engineer, frame it in the way you might actually see a change. But it's not a simple process,
Mhm.
because again, we do put a lot of technical analysis behind it.
Mhm.
But we should be able to explain it to you well enough that you understand why we think that risk is there.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I have a few. A couple of follow-ups on what Counselor Long was asking about. On page 9, we have that table that shows 103 people have been added, or homes have been added to the area, and 25 have been taken out.
Yep.
So the 25 are probably pretty happy, right? Okay, and the 103 are going to be, what's this all about?
Right.
So they were given letters, mailed letters to advertise this public hearing tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Hi, this is Lisa Adair again for the record, and I can speak to that a little bit more. So on our end, we've been working with your community to do outreach to these individuals, specifically with the community development department. So Josh can probably speak to that a little bit better. But we did provide mailers that could be sent out to individuals that were affected, as well as flyers. And then I know that there's also been Facebook posts that have gone around as well. But Josh can probably tell you a little bit more about the details about how those mailers were targeted to the individuals that are affected.
Thank you, Joshua Chandler, Community Development Department. While we were working on putting the information together for the outreach, Wasco County GIS put together a list of all the properties that were impacted. And we used that list and targeted each of these properties, sending out an initial mailer talking about what the process is. It was then followed up by a postcard that talked about, it was an invite for this meeting tonight, as well as tomorrow night. And then, yes, we posted to the Facebook page a couple times. We have a website. We created a web page on the city's website. So there's quite a bit of information that's slowly been updating. It says we're getting closer and closer to the date. We're adding a little bit more information as we go. So
Did you target the 103, or did you target the hundreds of others that are currently in there's no change?
Yeah, there was just under 300 mailers that went out. Yeah. So everyone, if you are in, if you're now out, and then if there was no change and you're still within, then we sent to each one of them, and each of them had their own basically targeted mentioning to them right on the top, you are now in the floodplain, you are now outside of the floodplain, letting them know what steps they need to do. So yeah, individual for each.
Thanks.
Yep.
Now, if somebody was to appeal, isn't it pretty much true that the reason they're appealing is because they're going to be paying a premium for flood insurance that they weren't paying before? Isn't that why people would appeal?
So, yeah, well, I mean, the way the maps affect most is if you are added to the floodplain and you have a federally backed mortgage, then there will be an insurance requirement.
Okay. And that's what would cause people to appeal, is they're getting this premium they didn't have to pay before. And obviously, and then you can answer their questions at the public meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I have had people appeal because they thought our floodplains weren't big enough.
Really?
And
Wow.
I've even had people appeal on our 500-year floodplain, which isn't a regulatory thing, because they just want the risks to be captured correctly.
Mm.
So, but more often than not, the appeals are coming from landowners that do not want to be added to the floodplain.
Right. Now, the insurance, FEMA doesn't actually give them the insurance. You contract with an insurance company that does all that. Right? Is that
It-
fair?
The insurance is actually through FEMA, but it's a kind of a grayer area that they're not. The insurance rates aren't set exactly to like, because we're doing this map update, whether you're in or out is defined by our flood maps. Whether you're paying a higher rate or a lower rate does not. So you're not going to see a higher rate because you've been added to the floodplain, but you may have a requirement to get the insurance that you didn't have before.
Right. And in layman's terms, and I'm not sure you can do that, maybe an engineer, what exactly would kick in somebody, what would cause somebody to have to be in the floodplain area they weren't before? I mean, can you be more specific? I mean, does the water level have to reach a certain height 1% of the time? Is that how that works?
Yeah. So there's kind of three elements that change the maps. One is the topography, and that's usually the biggest change. And so what we didn't have 40 years ago was a real good topography set. And so if the water gets out of bank, it's going to go to those low spots. And we didn't pick up on that in a number of, I think two of the key places in the Dalles. I think we just didn't pick up on that in the old study.
In 1984.
Yeah. But there's also a change. So there's thing we call hydrology, and then there's hydraulics. So hydrology is how much water actually gets into the river. And so we measure that, the USGS does with gauges to figure out how much water goes by at a particular point, and they measure it over a number of years. And so we've had a lot more years of data. And from that, there has been a slight increase in what we consider the 1% probability flood from 40 years ago. So that's another element. Then the final part is the hydraulics, which is you then create this physics-based model that takes all this water and then routes it downstream and figures out how deep and how wide it gets. So that, again, if you have really good topography, it better captures where the water is going to go. And so, again, some in certain circumstances, you can see like Dufur had a huge reduction in the floodplain, and so the water no longer went where we thought it was going to go. So those are the three main things that are usually changing your maps.
The topography part of it is the most significant, though.
Usually, yeah. And I think on the west side of the city of the Dalles, I think the topography really captured some low ground that really was missed in the 80s.
So the topography didn't change. It was the technology that allowed us to discover that the topography was susceptible of more flooding than before.
Yeah, I mean, basically the ground elevations were a lot cruder. And so if you take 1 point here, 1 point 500 feet away, and you're averaging your ground elevation, that's going to be a lot cruder than you do it like every foot. And that's how we were able to capture all the little nuances of the ground and how the water can go out.
I always thought that development, like parking lot paving and buildings and runoff from that increases flooding more than what you're talking about, but that's not the case.
Well, no, that can be part of it. So when we measure the flows in this, how much water gets into the channel, if there's been a lot more paving going on, then what you're going to see is an increase in how much water actually gets into it. And so that increases what we call the hydrology.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Good luck tomorrow. Thank you, Josh. Okay, item 6 is audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. Up to 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Citizens are encouraged to ask questions with the understanding that the city can either answer the question tonight or refer that question to the appropriate staff member who will get back to you within a reasonable amount of time. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. Upon being recognized by the chair, please state your name, spell it if necessary or appropriate, and state your street address is optional, but we ask that you identify the community where you live. We've also added a feature tonight. We have a 5-minute clock that you see on the screen to help you. What's that? It's not working. Well, maybe we don't have it tonight.
There you go.
I'll do it.
Do you have it? Okay, so if you're at the microphone, you can just look up and see how much time you have. It's a new invention that we discovered, and we're taking advantage of it tonight.
Nice.
It also relieves me of the pressure of having to keep the time. So with that, who would like to raise your hands, be recognized? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward, state your name, where you live, and speak into the microphone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Sally Carpenter. My address is PO Box 371 in the Dallas. Is it red? Sure. Again, my name is Sally Carpenter. My address is PO Box 371 in the Dalles. I spoke at your last meeting. I did, as well as my neighbors. Pardon? Okay. At that time, I shared with you the various ongoing and unexpected problems that have arisen from the spread of short-term rental properties in our neighborhood that is zoned as low-density residential. Based upon your comments at the meeting, I need to ensure that you understand my reason for sharing these problems with you. My reason is to provide a basis for my request that the city take action by 1, amending the city code, and 2, altering the allocation of city funds. My family did not sign up to live next to a Motel 6 or Holiday Inn. We chose to live in a low-density residential zone so as to avoid the traffic, noise, crime, and crowds found near transit lodging facilities. However, our neighborhood now has multiple transit lodging facilities that are marketed on internet sites such as Airbnb.com. Unlike a Holiday Inn, the transit lodging facilities, meaning the short-term rental properties in our neighborhood, have no discernible on-site manager to address promptly the concerns that inevitably arise, such as noise, trash, traffic, crime, parking, and crude behavior. Because the properties at issue are used as short-term rentals, the problems generated by these properties usually last for 1 to 2 days at a time before the renters vacate. That short duration means that by the time I were to contact the city's codes enforcement officer via email about a problem with a short-term rental, and that officer were to respond to the incident location, which historically requires 1 or 2 business days, the renters who caused the specific problems would have already vacated. As a result, the instruction by your staff at the council's meeting on May 8th that my neighbors and I submit our problems to the codes enforcement officer in writing would result in wasted time and resources. Although most of the short-term renters stay for a duration of 1 or 2 days at a time, there are distinct recurring problems that my neighbors and I have previously shared with you. The problems have not stopped and continue to infringe upon my ability to enjoy my own property peacefully. In a letter that I will submit to your clerk when I'm done, I have submitted examples, photos that show the crowding and traffic problems in our neighborhood. And I've included captions describing what those photos show. The noise emanating from the short-term rental properties has become the most frequent problem. The public notice provision of City Code 8.02.090 is inadequate to address noise problems. The reasons are that City Code 8.02.090 only requires the city to provide notice to property owners within 100 feet of the short-term rental property. The sounds of screaming kids, raucous gatherings, hot tub cocktail parties, and dance music always radiate more than 100 feet away. For a neighbor like me who lives more than 100 feet from the short-term rental party house at 300 West Scenic Drive, there's currently no requirement for the city to notify me about who operates the offending short-term rental. As a result, the stated purpose of City Code 8.02.090 fails each time I am subjected to the emanations of 300 West Scenic Drive. Bad actors have no difficulty in determining which properties are short-term rentals and whether those properties are vacant. The burglary last year of the short-term rental at 300 West Scenic Drive was the incident that prompted my own vigilance about property crimes in our neighborhood. I request you contact our police department to learn more about that specific incident. To protect our city's livability and deter criminals in our community, I request the council to take action by 1, amending the city code, and 2, changing the allocation of city funds. Specifically, I respectfully request the council to 1, establish a minimum period of stay of 30 days in any short-term rental property sited in a low-density residential zone. In addition, set a maximum number of total rental contracts that may be formed per year for any short-term rental property sited in a low-density residential zone. 2, require a person who owns or operates a short-term rental property sited in a low-density residential zone to reside on the premises being rented. 3, establish a limit for how many short-term rental licenses the city will grant per year in low-density residential zones. Maintain the licensing provisions of City Code 8.02.030. Establish a lottery to determine which licenses will be extended each year. Establish benchmarks which each property must meet before having its license renewed. 4, change short-term rentals from being an accessory use to being a conditional use within a low-density residential zone. Ensure the city notifies all neighbors within a half-mile radius about each conditional use application and subsequent hearing. 5, fund increased police patrols in neighborhoods with short-term rental properties. Increase the transient lodging tax to fund the increased police patrols. 6, amend City Code 8.02.090 to include mandatory notification to all neighbors, both property owners and long-term renters, who live within at least 1,000 feet of a short-term rental property. 7, evaluate making each of the above actions apply to all residential zones. Sincerely, Sarah E. Carpenter. And I'm giving a copy of this to your clerk right now.
Thank you. Could you stay there in case there's any questions?
Yes, sir. Does the council have any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Carpenter? I did, but go ahead.
I don't have any questions for Ms. Carpenter. I want to reiterate, I believe from 2 weeks ago, we directed staff to look at this, to specifically look at number of STRs, location or distribution geographically, to look at our ordinance and to review this issue and how we might address it. Am I correct in this?
Yes, you are, Counselor. Based on Mrs. Carpenter's comments last time, as well as other comments from the community.
Yep.
Other comments we've received via email since then in the last couple weeks or so. I've touched base with our community development department and the director there to work on this item to gather that requested information, to start and continue some of the research and some of the comparison to other communities that we've been looking at for best practices, such as some of the suggestions we've received to date, and bring that back to the council for discussion. In the meantime, I would encourage you, as we did previously, to certainly contact codes, but also contact our police department as well, to be as timely as possible and to deal with some of the disruptive behavior that may be violating some of the codes and ordinances that we currently have on the books while we conduct that effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I asked our city attorney today to contact a couple of cities that I know of. You've obviously done your homework. Can you tell us which cities you might have checked with to come up with the 7 recommendations so we can kind of match notes?
Some of my recommendations are based on my own analysis of the city code. Others were gleaned informally from the internet, specifically from Palm Springs, California, regarding the longer rental terms of 30 days. But I've not done an in-depth analysis of, say, how City of Hood River has done this, or cities on the coast, which I know were mentioned perhaps at the last meeting. But I do believe a funding allocation needs to happen to increase the patrols, as well as really looking at the current codes that address short-term rentals and how desperately they really need to be amended.
I'm familiar with most of your recommendations. I understand what you meant by each of them, except for the one about changing the allocations of the revenue. What does that mean?
Sure. So if the council's already budgeted a certain amount for the police department, I'm asking that be increased to support more patrols in neighborhoods that have short-term rentals.
Okay, I thought you tied it to the
Yes.
hotel motel.
Yeah. So the short-term rentals.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand.
Yes.
You're proposing increasing the lodging tax to pay for
That's,
okay.
yes, that is my proposal. There may be other sources of revenue for the council, but I don't know off the top of my head what those are.
Right. Thank you. Right. Anybody else? Just a minute. Did you have anything else you want?
No, sir. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you for coming. Yes, ma'am, you can come forward.
So is this on? Oh, yes. Okay. My name's Joyce Overeem. I live at 300 West 20th. I live right behind 300 West Scenic Drive, the big party house. I've been at this address, my husband and I, for 20 years, and we love it up there. However, in the last 2 years, it's gotten unlovely. I also live next door to 303 West 20th Street, which is now an Airbnb, which also has the garage has been turned into a gaming room. And that house can have 6 people. Scenic Drive house can have 12 people. And you read the blurb on the Airbnb site. And then I live catty corners from the 2 other Airbnb houses. I think it's 318 and 322 West 20th Street. So I'm surrounded by short-term rentals. Before I go on, but I think I saw you Sunday morning walking our neighborhood, and thank you if that was you. Appreciate it. And thank you, Darcy, for answering my letter. And I'm very glad I got to talk to Tim. So appreciate that attention. I want to read a paragraph, and you probably read it. I think it's on the Airbnb website for the pool house, the big party house behind me. And that paragraph reads, our scenic area homes give guests an opportunity to do more than one home in the same neighborhood, all walking distances for larger gatherings, aka parties. Please see our listings or inquire directly for more details. Well, I kind of wonder what these details are. So does that mean all these houses can have one group of people and they can kind of gravitate between the houses? And I suspect they all can go into pool house and go swimming. I think that's the big draw there. I also know that my other neighbor at 220 West Scenic Drive is talking currently with the owners to sell his home to the Airbnb people. So that'll be another house behind me. So like 6 people next door, 12 people on this scenic drive. And how many people are going to be at the 220 residents if that sale goes through? And then how many people stay at 318 and 322 West 20th? I mean, how many short-term people are going to be in this little area? And there's some guidelines or some laws that we can initiate to limit all of these people inhabiting our block on the weekends. Because actually, last 2 years, I dread weekends. There's a big gathering at the pool house. People are yelling and having fun. I don't have problems with people having fun. Just would like less of it the weekends. And so the other thing is I contact Airbnb. Well, I contact Airbnb about the noise. I've never called the police. I've threatened to call the police. That's usually what I have to do to get the noise turned down. And I usually get a canned answer. It's like, well, it's quiet hours from 10 to 6. Otherwise, the noise, there's nothing they can do about the noise. And I don't know if there's regulations for decibels or if it's just from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night, you can have as much noise as you want. You can have music or screaming and yelling. I don't know what rules are if there's a requirement. Do people call the police during the day and complain about loud parties, say at noon? Can they shut those down? Well, that's good to know.
I wasn't nodding my head.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
was-
I just get this canned answer every time I've complained.
Okay,
No, the quiet hours are from 10 to 7. And so just put up with it. So I mean, what does that, is that a problem with city, other residents? Does that arise with the police department during the day? People, can they complain about parties? And have them turn the noise down? Does that happen?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I find it hard to believe you couldn't call the police
Okay.
department and
That's
complain about we have nuisance ordinances that I would think cover noise and
Okay.
dogs barking and
Well,
No.
my dogs bark too, and I've had to sedate them. Put collars on because
Oh.
there's hordes of people, not hordes, but there's strangers running around in the back of the fence line, and there's noise, and there was that tarp wrestling all the time and the gurgling from the pool house. My dogs bark, but since then I've sedated them, so bark less.
Mr. Mayor. If I may. ma'am,
Yes,
we do have a noise ordinance that, as
Okay.
you noted, primarily deals with loud noise in the evening hours. I am not sure off the top of my head if there's verbiage as part of that noise ordinance that addresses excessive noise during the daytime. But it's certainly something that I can look into for you. Maybe
last year, it was a weekend, Saturday, the pool house boombox went on from Saturday morning, afternoon, into the evening, into the night. And then it started again Sunday morning and it went on all day. And finally I went over there and knocked on the door to ask them to turn the noise down. And the shirtless beer drinking guy answered the door. So I got nowhere with that. So I don't go over there. I don't ask anybody anymore to turn the noise down because it's not going to happen. So it's good to know that there's an ordinance. The other thing is when I've contacted the host through Airbnb, I get the same canned answer. It's quiet hours. And then it's a children's birthday party and you're running the children's birthday party and you should just put up with it.
did you
Oh.
contact the manager or did you contact the owner?
I contacted the manager, but I have talked to the owner too.
Hmm.
So I just kind of don't get any
Okay,
feedback on that. And I do have complaints about traffic. So for example, this weekend, the big toy hauler trailer that got hosed up in our cul-de-sac. Unfortunately, I was home and I was able to move my car so he could get his big trailer out of the cul-de-sac. I think if I'd not been home, he would have maybe hit my car. I'm not sure if he came close. The other thing I want to say, the one last thing is my husband works for BPA and he tries to hire electrical engineers and they come here and they look at the housing situation and they say, never mind. He did hire an engineer about a month ago. He took the job, came here a week later, looked at the housing situation and said, never mind. Goodbye. So I think this Airbnb thing is making the housing situation worse. There are people that would move here and take family wage jobs with families, but the housing situation is not good. The other thing is, can we do a moratorium on new Airbnbs in that neighborhood?
That's something the staff's gonna be looking at. Well, yeah. Okay, Council Richardson, did you have a question or comment? I thought you were motioning to me.
Put on the clock, Mr. Mayor. We got a lot of business
Yeah.
still to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
We
There
are
is-
definitely
there
looking.
is
I
no-
want you to understand, we've heard you, government doesn't move that quickly, but
Understand.
it does move.
It has no word.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Gomez, come forward, please. Nice shirt, sir.
My wife picked it up.
Ah.
Seems to be the popular color this season, doesn't it? Don't start that clock yet.
The clock's not working, is it?
Oh, yeah.
It's very difficult to see.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought it was broken or something. Okay. The clock doesn't start until you start talking.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chuck Gomez. I am the co-owner of the Granada Theater along with my wife, Deborah. And we have been here not quite 10 years from our initial research into the Granada, but have been a strong member of the community for now going on 8 years. And we are very happy to be part of this community. And I consider it my adopted hometown. It's all how you look at things. And I didn't bring any written notes. As you know, I'm in the entertainment business. So I brought a recorded note from a radio station that I had that was playing about a week ago. And it's quite important. Give a listen to it, bear with it, and I'll define it a little further after we hear these 2 minutes of radio show.
I sure you're under the table. Now, May 27th, we're going to the Dolls in Oregon for our live stage show. We sure are, and I'm fortunate enough now to be talking and speaking to the owner of the Granada Theater in the Dalles, Mr. Chuck Gomez. Chuck, how you doing?
Hi, Tom. Great to be on Coast to Coast tonight.
Well, we are looking forward to coming to your theater. We're gonna have a good time here. I'd like to give us a background on your theater and just tell us a few of the shows that have been there. I understand it's a really cool show there.
Well, it's the first theater built and designed west of the Mississippi for the talkies back in 1929. And Judy Garland came here and Cab Calloway and Louis Armstrong. And lately it's been the Gatlin brothers and Billy Bob Thornton and Quiet Riot. We have a little bit of everything here at the historic Granada Theater.
Amazing. Tell me and tell us a little bit about the vibe of the city. People keep telling me, I've never been there. George has never been there. And I keep hearing it's such a neat little city.
It's a wonderful little community, and it's really going through a rebirth as the art in the community is exploding. It's the city of murals. We have close to 40 outdoor murals. The Granada itself has 2 of the largest indoor murals in the state. We're right off the Columbia River. There's live music everywhere, historic buildings in a walking tour. I hope a lot of people fall in love with the Dells when they come to the show with George. We're just an inch away. In fact, I thought we were sold out, and the fire marshal has made an exception and has counted our seats and has opened up another 50 seats for us. So, folks, if you want tickets, you better call because they are literally flying out the door. The phone is ringing nonstop for this live stage show that's coming in.
Hey, Chuck, last thing before you go, tell us real quick, where's the dinner?
Hey, we do
And then they go on and ask about what we're serving that night and everything. The importance of that little radio program is that is the number one late night radio show for the last 30 years. 30 years, number one show. That particular night, I did the demographics from the radio stations. That particular night, their listening audience was a tad over 30 million people. 30 million people. Now you ask, how do you advertise a community? Do you do local radio? Do you do local subscriptions in newspapers? Is it word of mouth? When you are reaching 30 million people in one night, that is far reaching. This program has over 231 million listeners a month, and we have been on that program since December. What is that? 6 months now. Every day, every couple days, I was interviewed on that radio show. Many times it's the host that does the interview himself. And if we want a community to grow and if we want it to stay strong, we want tourism, I believe, to come into our community. And it's not just, oh, well, let's just do some community interests and some folks that come. We really have to shoulder up responsible advertising, and the Granada Theater has really stepped forward. 30 million people in one night heard what a beautiful little community we have here. The Granada Theater needs to be first and foremost on the council's agenda, on the council's lips and their minds, on the chambers, on other people's. And I see I've run out of time already, but we have a military dedication that night. We have a gentleman's flag from Iwo Jima and Okinawa. And I think if you check all our hotel records, you'll find just about every hotel has now been sold out for that weekend. So I wanted to make it available and make it known to the city council that the Granada is working hard to reach out to literally every state in the union right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gomez, what's the date on that?
It's May 27th.
Thank you.
This Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for your time and attention. Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the council for up to 5 minutes? Last call. Okay. On we go. City Manager's report, Mr. Cleaves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me get back to my little cheat sheet here. We conducted several interviews for various city positions over the last few weeks. We have offers out for the Economic Development Officer and the Facility Supervisor. And so we are very positive on that front and hope to finalize things soon. We have also been selected for the next step in the AmeriCorps Rare process. And so working closely with Community Development Director Josh Chandler on that front, as well as coordinating with some of our partners on the various projects that we have for that potential rare, including Lisa from the Chamber. I also attended the urban renewal meeting last week, I think is what it was. Time flies. And so there's a lot of different exciting projects coming down the pipeline, and I'm sure some of the councilors may speak to some of those. And also went on a ride along with some of our police officers last Friday night. Patrol Officer Call, who was a very professional, excellent officer. And it's just a great opportunity to be able to ride along with some of our officers and really see what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And also wanted to remind the council that this coming Thursday, there is, I think in essence, a reintroduction of the Dalles Main Street program. They'll be hosting a meeting at the Gorge Wine Library at 5:30 this Thursday. Sherry Stewart, the Oregon Main Street State Coordinator, will be in attendance to unveil and reintroduce some of the work that they've been doing and the new structure of the program. So if there's interest in attending that, please feel free. And then finally, we're working with some of our local stakeholders and partners here to organize essentially a site visit in July with some congressional field staff to talk about the various congressionally directed spending requests that have come from the community, notably for the council and for the city. We submitted a CDS request for the airport to support the EDA and skill skills training hangar in partnership with CGCC. But there's been a number of different projects submitted by different organizations in our community, including the college and the Port of the Dalles, Wasco County, and several others. And so I'll keep the council informed as to that site visit in July, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Klebs? The Main Street is at 5:30. I was told it was at 5. At 5.
Not 5:15.
Oh,
Thank you for that correction.
all right. I didn't get it right either. Okay, council reports. We'll start to my left with Councilor Richardson.
So much, so much to report. I'll keep it very brief, though. We have some exciting projects at Urban Renewal. I don't want to steal the committee chair's thunder, but I would say anybody who's interested in sort of downtown developments and prosperity might keep an eye on Urban Renewal over the next 2 or 3, 4 months. We did some senior staff evaluations, our city attorney, judge, and manager recently. And I think that's it for right now.
Councilor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On May 12th, the Climate Resiliency Committee met for its final meeting. We dissolved in accordance with our 1-year charter, following the presentation to the county and the city recommendations. On May 18th, Q-Life Budget Committee met, and we recommended approval of the 2023-24 budget to the regular committee. And on May 19th, also participated in the annual evaluations of the senior staff. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Long.
In the last 2 weeks, I basically attended the senior staff reviews and also answered a few emails and phone calls from constituents around the short-term rentals.
Councilor McLaughlin.
On May 16th, I attended the urban development meeting at 5:30. Airport commission meeting on Friday at 7:30. Staff evaluations Friday at 11 o'clock. I've been working on shopping cart solutions with our city attorney and mayor, and I have been investigating short-term rental complaints and forwarding my data to the city manager's office. That's it.
As far as my report goes, on May 9th, May 10th, I attended the Mid-Columbia Medical Center's Nurses Week celebration and gave awards to 2 of the nurses who were one Nurse of the Year award at Mid-Columbia Medical Center. And I appreciate the work of our city clerk to make all the necessary arrangements and give the awards out. So thank you, Izetta, for all you did. May 13th, I attended the Civic's 100th anniversary at the Civic. May 15th, I gave a presentation at the Dalles High School for Senior Decision Day. I was on KODL with our police chief on May 16th. On Saturday, I attended the new food bank facility grand opening. And I also that same evening attended the Dalles Athletic Hall of Fame awards banquet at the old Watonka High School. They went back as far as 1920 to give an award to the 1920 state championship football team, among other awards that were given. That was the oldest. And it was really an enjoyable event. And like I say, it's going to happen on an annual basis from here on. So that's it. Okay. Next is the consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the more important items and issues. Any councilor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. There's only one item on tonight's consent agenda, and that's the approval of the May 8th city council meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilor Long and seconded by Councilor McLaughlin to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10A has been taken out, and so we're at item 10B, which is the annual chip seal program authorization. Director of Public Works is with us tonight. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of council. You want to start the clock for me?
We start the clock, yes.
Beat you to it.
Yeah, you beat me to it, didn't you?
In recent years, the Public Works Department's utilized chip sealing as a fairly cost-effective treatment for maintenance on its city streets. It's a treatment that we can undertake without tripping federal requirements to upgrade sidewalk ramps when the work is being done. We also follow up the chip seal with the application of a fog seal. That's done a few weeks after the initial chip seal, helps lock the rock from the chip seal into place and extend that surface treatment by several years. This year's effort will be undertaken like we have in the past in partnership with Wasco County. Wasco County has the equipment to do chip seals that the city does not have. We also combined our purchase of the chip seal oil with Wasco County's purchase for their projects this year to get the best pricing available to us. This year we'll be doing about 28 different street sections scattered throughout the city for a total of about 4.2 miles of streets to be treated. The list of those streets is available on the city's webpage under the Transportation Division. In the staff report, I've provided a breakdown of the individual costs, including chip seal oil, chip seal rock, the Wasco County labor, and allowance to tow vehicles if we encounter the need to do so on streets. Usually if that occurs, it's because we encounter an inoperable vehicle that the property owner isn't able to move themselves. So we engage the services of a towing company to get it out of the way and work with the property owner and where that ends up going. And then the cost for the fog seal oil, which will be applied a few weeks later. We do reach out to the communities, the residents along these routes in advance of doing the work so that they know the work's being done and the vehicles can be moved. Our total cost for the project this year is estimated to be $182,698. Within the street fund, we actually have $458,318 budgeted, so there are adequate funds available for the project. And with that, it's staff's recommendation that the city council move to authorize the expenditure for the 2023 chip seal project in an amount not to exceed $182,698.
Questions for Mr. Anderson?
I have one.
Sir Richardson.
Director Anderson, what's the expected life of a chip sealed, fog sealed street mile?
It depends a little bit on how much traffic the street it receives. But we usually are looking for somewhere in that 5 to 7 year time frame for a chip seal and we can only apply the chip seal onto surfaces that are already in fairly good shape, and we just seal the cracks ahead of it. Surface that's already really heavily broken up or got a lot of settling isn't an appropriate candidate for a chip seal.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Looking for a motion?
Mayor Mays, I can go ahead and do that. I move to authorize the expenditure for the 2023 chip seal project in the amount not to exceed $182,698.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Councilor McLaughlin and seconded by Councilor Randall to authorize the expenditures for the 2023 chip seal project. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Still have time too.
We still got 20. I can't read those numbers. They're too small.
Restart the clock.
Next on the agenda, resolution authorizing transfers of funds. Ms. Wilson.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. You have before you my agenda staff report 23-014 authorizing transfers of budget amounts between categories of various funds of the City of the Dalles adopted budget, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures for this fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Resolution 23-014 transfers $51,461 from the contingency line item to cover the following items. $20,000 is needed to compensate the police department. Some additional overtime is needed due to staffing issues. $26,461 is needed to for the debt services in the other department of the general fund. Due to the transitioning of GASB 87, the city's required to recognize a lease liability, and it's stated as debt services, which was not budgeted for. $5,000 is needed for the IT department to add some additional VIBA payout. Our IT manager retired, and the city policy allows money to be transferred into VIBA for a portion of sick time. And lastly, the a transfer of $8,900 from the airport contingency line item to the airport department for the increase in the property tax line item for additional taxes that was inadvertently left out of the budget. And resolution 23-014 would not impact the total budget for the general fund or the airport fund.
Any questions from Ms. Wilson? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll do that. Mr. Mayor, I'd move to adopt resolution 23-014, authorizing transfers of budgeted amounts between categories of various funds of the city of the Dalles adopted budget, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor Long to adopt the resolution authorizing the transfers of funds. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We've come to item 12, adjournment. Does anybody, before we adjourn, have anything they want to raise for the good of the order? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.